Welcome to MTN Outdoors.
Welcome everybody to this week's episode of MTN Outdoors. I'm once again your guide, Andy Curtis. Thanks for spending some time with us here this week. And we are here at the base of Mount Helena on the trail because a lot of our stories today have to do with being on the trail. You get the connection there? That's the kind of unmatched creative wit you sign up for each and every week right here with MTN Outdoors. So, thanks for not turning me off right now. So we'll hit the trail, head down to Wise River, where a group of wise people recently met to try and solve the very real issue of declining fish populations in some of our state's best fishing spots. So we'll take a look at that story. Plus, we'll see a couple of very unusual animal encounters that were also pretty violent here recently and are strange even by Montana standards. But first, before we get to those two stories, we'll hit the trail and head down to just north of Yellowstone National Park and see a very colorful display honoring the history and heritage of our native people here in the state. MTN's Jackie Coffin starts things off for us.
It might be dark in the park, but Yellowstone is lit up with this beautiful installation. You can even go inside. The sight of 7 teepees standing in line with the Roosevelt Arch is already a powerful sight.
Very much an indigenous area before it even became a park.
But the magic of the display really comes alive after dark.
So this one is all about unity and bringing people together and building relationships.
The Pretty Shield Foundation was started by Bill Snell to share indigenous culture and keep traditions and language alive.
My mother, Dr. Elma Snell, who was actually the grandchild of Pretty Shield. And Pretty Shield, she taught her about herbs and nutrition. My ancestors really expressed the importance of us to share our way of life.
And lighting the teepees outside of a place that attracts millions of visitors a year has allowed Snell to share that way of life with people from all over the world.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty spectacular to have all these teepees set up here and all the discussion that we're able to have. It's really a cool setup.
Installing and lighting up teepees started as a project for Pretty Shield in Winnipeg, Canada, as a symbol for hope for troubled youth. Since then, it has spread across the West and first came to Yellowstone in 2022.
Last year was about the resiliency of the people because of the flood and the bridges and the roads were washed away. So this year we thought, well, let's go back down. People, by popular demand, I guess, would really like to do it.
The teepees will be here at the north entrance until August 7th, but Snell knows the impression they'll make on visitors will last a lifetime.
We're resilient, we still exist, and I think that it's really important that we continue to grow and be shared with all people.
In Gardner, Jackie Coffin, MTN News.
Here at Pompey's Pillar, you'll find the perfect mix of history and outdoor recreation. Whether you take the stairs up to see William Clark's preserved signature or hike along one of the 9 trails surrounding the pillar itself, there's something here to do for everyone.
You can see birds roosting up there.
Montanans might be familiar with the natural beauty and historical significance of Pompey's Pillar.
This site is amazing.
But for out-of-staters, it's a hidden gem.
Without reservation, I'm surprised it's not more prominent.
But what's new for Bruno Trinkler from Alabama might also be new for some Montanans, as this historical site now looks a little different.
You can see the sidewalk just goes out and just drops off right there.
Pompey's Pillar wasn't immune from last year's floods. The Yellowstone River washed away 20 feet of this embankment along one of its most popular trails, Landmark Pass.
We had to move this trail about an additional 20 feet that way. So hopefully it's going to be a long time before the river comes up that close to it.
And there were also changes made to the trails even before the floods. Prior to 2018, there were only 5 trails to explore.
Most of them are very short. They range They range typically about half a mile. Most of them aren't even necessarily that long.
4 new trails were built between 2018 and 2022. Pompey's Prairie, Cliffview, Canal, and Elk River, which is still under construction. While pre-existing trails were expanded, a major rock stabilization project is also underway to secure fault lines that run along the pillar itself.
I think it's a great place to come visit and see what history is all about here in America.
Making the site an even more desirable place to visit for travelers like Bondi Coley and Ben Mason.
To think that, that's how this whole Northwest territory was discovered, on land, in the water, and then to have a spot like that where you could go see all around. Really cool.
A centuries-old site with a new look to make sure it's preserved for generations to come.
The rock with the history background is just amazing.
In Yellowstone County, Alina Howder, MTN News.
It's always great to escape and enjoy the outdoors of Montana. After a day of hiking and fishing, the last thing you want to do is that dreaded drive home. Well, here at Ear Mountain, a cabin is available to rent so you can get a good night's sleep before heading home.
It's a one great room, which is a kitchen, dining, and living room area, and then there are 2 bedrooms off of the main. One bedroom has 2 twin bunks, and the other bedroom has 4 twin bunks. And the futon actually sets out in the living area. You've got a nice view of a beautiful wood stove with glass doors, so it's kind of romantic. And so that folds down into a queen-size bed.
The cabin was upgraded to sleep 8 people comfortably, a place to cook dinner and breakfast, as well as enjoying the evening by a campfire or cuddling up next to a wood-burning stove.
The cabin comes fully equipped with dishes, pots and pans, silverware, glasses, cooking utensils and eating utensils, all of that type of thing. There is electricity in the cabin and a few outlets, so you are able to plug some items in as well, chargers and that kind of things. The only water source there, as I said, is the frost-free hydrant out front. So what you'd have to do is heat water on the stove and then go out and rough it. We do have a fire pit. We put in a nice handicap accessible fire pit, and that is just not more than 50 yards from the cabin. So that's a real nice area to gather. I mean, it's a beautiful area. That cabin actually sits on a site that is within about, I would say, 6 to 8 miles from a major trailhead up at the very end of the South Fork Teton Road. And at that site, at that trailhead, is a jump-off point to the Headquarters Pass, which is in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and also our most busy day-use hike, which is Our Lake. So that would be one of the big draws probably in the summer. The river is close by, the South Fork River, for fishing and that kind of thing. Lots of hiking in the area. There are BLM trails which eventually turn into Forest Service trails. Cost for the cabin is $75 per night. That's pretty affordable.
So in planning your next trip to Ear Mountain, make sure to make a reservation so you can relax and enjoy the cabin after a long day of hiking. From here in Ear Mountain, I'm Paul Sanchez for MTN News.
And let's stay in that neck of the woods for this week's MTN Outdoors trivia question. And just giving you a heads up for this week, you might want to write it down, get a piece of paper, a pencil, or a pen, something like that, because this week's question is a doozy. What year was the Ear Mountain Wildlife Management Area established? Was it A, back in 1976, B, 1966, or C, 1986? See? Yeah, I told you this was another hard question this week. But remember, I am preparing you for the final exam at the end of the semester. So trust me, you'll be happy you're doing your studying now because it will pay off. And you'll be happy you waited through the commercials because we'll be right back with your answer after this.
We now return to MTN Outdoors.
Hey, welcome back everybody to this week's episode of MTN Outdoors. Thanks for sticking around with us here today. I'm once again your guide, Andy Curtis. Now, before the break, I asked you this week's MTN Outdoors trivia question. And in case you missed it, I'll show you again, but just a small word of warning. This week's question is a hard one. So here we go one more time. Now, before the break, we were talking about the Ear Mountain cabin that you can rent. But how much do you know about the Ear Mountain Wildlife Management Area? For example, do you know when it was established? Was it A, 1976, B, 1966, or C, 1986? If you feel like A, 1976 is the way to go, then you should trust your gut more often because you are 110% right. This MWA was purchased to provide access to federally managed lands along the Rocky Mountain front, with a real emphasis on winter range habitat for muleys and bighorn sheep. And if you're not exactly sure where it is, it's located on the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountain front. And when you are out on the Rocky Mountain front, you know you need to be bear aware, right? I mean, that's just kind of common sense here anywhere in Montana. But how often are you otter aware? My guess is not very often. But after seeing this next story, you might want to keep an eye out for those furry little critters.
Just after 8 last night, 3 women floating a stretch of the Jefferson River near Lewis and Clark Caverns encountered some otters. They attacked, destroying an inner tube and injuring all 3 before they were able to get out of the water.
And the otter left the area. All 3 women received injuries in the encounter. One of the women had injuries that were more serious, and she was taken by helicopter to a hospital here in Bozeman. All 3 women have received treatment for their injuries.
Jacobson stresses otters are in just about every river in southwest Montana, and though attacks are rare, they do happen. A woman on the Madison in 2016, a young boy on the Big Hole in 2021. This attack, he says, appears defensive.
At this point, we haven't gotten reports of otters being seen in this area since then. We don't have any plans at this time to try and locate or to trap and remove these otters, but we are posting signs in these areas just advising visitors that there's otter activity going on in the area and to be aware of that.
Jacobson stresses attention to wildlife when recreating on waterways, especially this time of year.
Water levels are lower. It brings people who are recreating on rivers into closer proximity with wildlife that may be on those rivers as well, because there's just less water, there's less space, and so keep that in mind when you're out recreating. To do all you can to just keep your distance from wildlife.
In Bozeman, Chet Lehman, MTN News.
Imagine you're awoken in the middle of the night to find a black bear has broken into your house. What would you do? Well, that exact situation happened to one Luther couple Thursday morning, and they had to make a quick decision. In a town as small as Luther,
If they smell something, they come right in.
a break-in is big news.
Well, I can't judge what happened.
Especially when the intruder weighs several hundred pounds and looks like this.
This is not normal bear behavior.
What happened here Thursday is a tale Tom Bolcom and his fiancée Celie Oblander will be telling the rest of their lives. They awoke around 3 a.m. Thursday morning to their dog barking downstairs. When Tom went to check out the commotion, he found the black bear in his living room.
I don't have a specific, how much he weighed or how old specifically he was, but adult, relatively large male black bear.
Tom grabbed his gun and shot the bear, chasing it from room to room before it finally collapsed after several shots. This as Celie hid in another room. While the couple didn't want to talk about the encounter on camera, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks says they did what they had to do.
We had a local warden visit with the couple after this incident, and after hearing their perspective on the situation, FWP's stance on the situation is that their action was completely justifiable as a self-defense action.
The bear got in through a window that was cracked open, and many in Carbon County know it could have as easily happened to them.
These kinds of encounters only increase with more bears, and there are more bears. right now.
This particular bear had already made a name for itself, getting into other trouble in and around the area.
This particular bear had gotten into attractants in the surrounding area and neighborhood where this couple lived. There's a pretty long list of potential bear attractants out there. Most common one is garbage, so making sure you are using a bear-resistant garbage bin if that's available, and then ideally storing even that bear-resistant bin inside of a locked building until the day of disposal.
Good advice, especially after an encounter like this, as many hope to never encounter a similar situation, a nightmare that for one couple came true.
Keep the smells out of your house and out of around your house.
In Luther, Kelsey Marison, MTN News.
Trapping has always been a part of life in Montana, in fact, long before there was a Montana. I'm on the Jefferson River at a fishing access site that bears the name of a member of Lewis and Clark's Corps of Discovery turned fur trapper, George Drouillard. Now, trapping the right way, the focus of a 2021 piece of legislation.
You purchased a trapping license at least for 3 seasons, you don't need to take trapper education. But if that's not the case for you, then you do need to take a trapper education class. And
that happens in 2 parts, and time is of the essence for the second part.
Folks have to take an online course, and then at the conclusion of that course, they take an in-person field day. So we're going to be having one of those in-person field days in Livingston on August 25th, and this is probably the only class, the only field day that we will have in this part of the state for this season. So
now this is a one-time requirement. Jacobson says, look at it as a unique opportunity to learn from the best of the best.
Provide some guidance on things like regulations and laws, how to trap effectively and ethically, and ways to go about doing it so that they're able to be successful, safe, responsible, and all these other things, similar to what we teach in our hunter education program.
With our leg hold traps, once again, you can't have any traps that are bigger than 9 inches on the
They're
inside
taught by
jaw.
really experienced volunteer
7.
instructors who have decades of experience trapping, and really it's a great opportunity to come and learn from these folks, to pick their brain and pick up as much information as you can to help you be successful in your pursuits with trapping.
Again, the Trapper Education Field Day set for August 25th in Livingston. Jacobson stresses it's important to have the online course finished first. At the George Drouillard Fishing Access Site near Three Forks. Chet Lehman, MTN News.
We now return to MTN Outdoors.
Hey, welcome back everybody to this week's episode of MTN Outdoors. I'm Andy Curtis, and thank you for spending some time with me here again this week. Now, maybe you're not exactly a trail person, so we won't be seeing you here on Mount Helena anytime soon, which is fine. Everybody's different. You and I won't be hanging out anytime soon, but that's okay. That's all right. Maybe you're more of a river person, which I respect. But maybe you really don't know too much about our state's rivers. Maybe you want to start exploring the Yellowstone River, but don't know where to jump in first. Luckily, there is an app for that. And I'm not just saying that, I'm serious. MTN's Haley Monaco shows us the details.
Interested in exploring the Yellowstone River but not sure where to start? Well, there's literally an app for that. It tells you all the public access sites and even some hazards you may not see while on the river.
There's no other river in the United States quite like this Yellowstone River.
Mike Penfold has a deep appreciation of the Yellowstone River and wants to pass it on.
What we're trying to do is get people to understand that this Yellowstone River is a great asset and that it needs to be protected.
And even he knows these days there's no better way to get people recreating on and preserving the Yellowstone River than an app. So, with the help of the nonprofit Our Montana, Penfold got to work creating Explore the Yellowstone River.
So people can download this app on their phone. It has all kinds of stuff in it. You can see where you are on the river and bring it up from an aerial view.
The app also has historic points of interest, not just near Billings, but along the entirety of the 700 miles of the river.
If you like the outdoors, the river is the best place to go.
Stacy Stablefelt doesn't have the app yet, but she thinks it's a great idea, as she spends multiple days a week on the river.
Fish, play in the water, catch minnows, catch toads, just enjoy the sun in the outdoors.
Cassie Hammond also doesn't have the app, but after learning about it, that soon could change.
I think I would definitely utilize an app like that. Just as from my point of view, my kids love to live outside, and it's always fun to find new places to explore.
There are now hundreds right at your fingertips. In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Declining trout numbers, less water in the Big Hole River, these are major concerns for people who live and make their living on the river. That's why many people came to the small community of Wise River to attend a roundtable hosted by the governor, and they weren't afraid to express their concerns.
Recognizing that water is our most valuable resource and that we need to work hard to maintain it, to store it, to make sure it's available for everyone to use.
Almost 200 people, including ranchers and outfitters, packed the Wise River Community Building recently to hear from Governor Greg Gianforte and a panel of experts on the health of waterways in the Jefferson Basin.
Our waterways are really critical to our way of life. They're critical for agriculture, for outdoor recreation, for the tourism industry. And when they're not as healthy as we want them to be, it causes problems.
The alarm went up earlier this year when the FWP found low trout numbers in the Big Hole and other local rivers. The panel at the community discussion told the crowd that it's stepping up studies to try to determine the reason for the low fish population and the overall health of the rivers. Some suggested fishing should be stopped on the river until researchers get some clear answers.
Some reduction in pressure, not just 2 hours, to save what is left of what was teeming years ago and now is in scarcity.
Climate change is real. I think we need to acknowledge that man has caused a drastic change in the weather, and we need to acknowledge that and participate in saving species around the world.
Jim Hagenbarth of the Big Hole Watershed Committee said ranchers know the rivers better than most people, and water is the most important issue. He suggested finding ways of storing water, damming high mountain creeks, and other ways to keep the rivers flowing at healthy levels. Outfitters and ranchers agree that healthy rivers are good for everyone.
Water is the primary driver. We got to find a way to better use water, and to better use water in a way that everybody in this room, it cannot be robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Thanks again, everybody, and until next week, stay safe, and I'll see you out there.